Persuading people to take the actions we want can be hard. Our teams and clients are bombarded with thousands of messages every single day. But there is a way for you to get above the noise. Stories. This is the Stories with Traction podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Zahn. Join my guests and me as we unpack the power of storytelling. We'll talk about topics like leadership, sales, and marketing, all through the lens of strategic storytelling. Enjoy this episode. You're about to listen to a storytelling FAQ sprint episode with Michelle Griffin. For those of you who might not be familiar with Michelle, she coaches on authority-focused personal branding to help professionals step out and be seen as leaders in their space. Since this is an FAQ sprint, Michelle will be answering a question on branding, and I'll be answering a question on storytelling. Let's dive in. Michelle, if someone's out there thinking to themselves about all the fear that might come up regarding sharing, how would you address someone overcoming the fears of putting themselves out there?
Matt, that is probably the million-dollar question. And you know what? It happens to all of us. From the consultants to the CEOs I've worked with, to doctors, lawyers, any one of accomplished professionals, especially this matters because they feel like more is at stake. But I want you to know it's very, very common and it is very, very easy to contain. When I wrote the LinkedIn branding book, we identified, Matt, about 26 to 30 fears that a lot of us, we even had the LinkedIn confidence survey. So the first step is knowing this is something that everyone experiences. And it's also sometimes the sign when you feel this that you're ready to go bigger. So it is probably your cue to say, I need to get out there. Again, the thing about it is you don't have to share your personal side. And I think that is another part of this question. People hear personal branding and they think, oh my goodness, I have to be so vulnerable. And I know you tell stories, Matt, but this is not telling your deepest, darkest, embarrassing secrets. No, not at all. Yes, there are people out there who do that, but in the realm of what I do with strategic personal branding tied to business goals, it is also about sharing your expertise, your business, all the stories of your journey and yourself so that you're top of mind. So when you think about it, I have coined this easy to remember term, Matt, that really helps people calm down. And I felt the same way too, because at the end of the day, back when I was doing PR, I'm so used to putting other people in the spotlight. I am not the kind of person who wants to be in the spotlight, despite me being extremely extroverted. So I coined this word that I think will help everyone understand. You don't have to be personal. You just need to be personable, and that is by being professional. Now, it is not a typo. It is spelled Perfessional. It's one part personal, Matt. Just like you would talk to someone at the water cooler at work, and the neighbor, you're just being personable, right? You're sharing who you really genuinely are, talking exactly as you do. And so that you just give little snippets about you. You tell, like, Matt, you do a wonderful job of sometimes sharing your family's pictures, but nothing really deep. Or you're sharing your stories when you're speaking at these events and workshops all over. So you sprinkle in some personable parts about you, right? But on the flip side, and I see this a lot on LinkedIn, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have expertise to share, to transform others. So we always want to be very strategic about sharing our expertise. Now, the beautiful thing is you can marry the both. You do that so well on LinkedIn and your storytelling posts. But when you think about it, you're just being personable, sharing your insight, your journey, your stories, how it relates to you and your business. And that, to me, is a lot more comforting when you have that permission and knowledge of the container of how to get out there.
So I really appreciate you mentioning that everyone goes through these fears, even if they're in C-suite or if they're a VP, they have fear. It's interesting that you said that because this just happened to me yesterday. So just as a preface, I posted on LinkedIn every single day without fail for the last 5 years. Okay. So since 2019, every single day. So tons of stories, tons of messages, and I still have fears sometimes when it comes to putting different stories out there. Yesterday was one of those times. There was something that I posted and I had it written. I'm ready to hit post. And I'm like, should I? is this going to rub someone the wrong way? Should I? And I posted it and it got a ton of traction. I identified numerous buyers based on putting that post in the world because the post, I'm not going to say it went viral, but mini viral, meaning like it far exceeded outside of my followers. So a bunch of people are commenting that I've never even seen them comment before. I've never seen them like before. And I was able to identify a new batch of buyers based on that. So I appreciate you mentioning that everyone has fears. I still go through fears, even though I've done it numerous times. So I do want people to recognize that seriously, everyone out there sometimes has different hesitancies when it comes to this, for sure.
No, that is such a great point. And you're never going to get rid of it. You just contain it. But when you think of the big why, Matt, I think of the big why because I have mine dialed in, and I know you do too, on why I'm putting myself out there because I have expertise to help others, the right people who I'm here for, not everyone, transform with how I help them. And that is something I know I have to be visible for. And they won't know you unless you're out there. And then, like you said, sometimes those big risk moments are the best moments that end up paying dividends for us. And it doesn't have to be scary. The more you get out there and stay out there consistently, dialed in of how you're supposed to be out there, that's the comfort feeling. And you just keep building on it, much like you have for 5 impressive years. Congrats on that. That's super,
Thanks.
that's super impressive. And it becomes fun. There's a 3 Ps to personal branding I like to interject in there. You're really helping define your purpose. This is why I'm here, and we all want that. Check that off. It's also personal development. You're learning to read, to write, to develop these core communication skills that are so needed. And then, of course, the professional claim, which we are talking about here. When you marry those 3 Ps and all the things I've talked about today, it's a lot more comforting to know, yes, there is power and there's payoff to putting yourself out there.
For sure. That's a great point.
All right, Matt, you are really an advocate of story banking. I know it, and you've taken your course and I've learned from you. And when I hear story bank, I think of you. But what happens if I have the same story and I get bored of telling it? What do I do?
All right, that's an awesome question. That's a question I get asked quite often, especially from individuals that are selling. Okay, so let me tackle it from a couple different angles. So when it comes to sales, if someone's getting bored, more than likely they've shared the story again and again and again, and they're getting bored. Now, if the story works, it works. And I would recommend that they continue to share it. The difference is the way they're feeling the story themselves. Okay, so here's what I mean by feeling. If we're getting bored, we're not excited to share it anymore. I would question, why are you not excited to share it anymore when you know it's working for you? So if you know that you share a certain story and the likelihood that you closing the sale goes up, well, by all means, share the story. But one of the ways to think about it differently is truly thinking about how you're going to be helping this individual, what they're going to get out of your product or service, and really embodying excitement as you're sharing the story. So, a prime example, I was doing a workshop for a company not too long ago, and there was a sales rep in this room that used to be the number one sales rep in the entire company, and he had missed quota 3 months in a row. So now the company is in panic mode. So what I did was I did a strategic storytelling session with him, and I was asking him, what brings excitement to you? And he started listing all these different things. And one of the things that he mentioned was he loves going to college football games. Okay. So I said to him, the next time you share some of your sales stories, I want you to visualize that you're at one of these college football games. I want you to embody the excitement. Now, I'm not advocating for him, tearing off his shirt and painting his chest. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying embody the element of excitement. And then when you go in and you present and you are in sales mode and you're sharing these stories, you're going to feel that excitement come out. This is known as an emotional overlay. So, an emotional overlay is something that a lot of actors go through. So, if you think of all the great actors out there that can cry in a moment's notice, or they can become extremely excited and happy, they have focused so intentionally on specific stories in their life that bring out sadness, that bring out excitement, that bring out anger, and they can turn it on like flipping a switch. We need to do that when it comes to a sales process and continuing to share the same story, but have a different way of viewing and thinking of that story as we're sharing it. So that's the sales piece. When it comes to marketing, if you're getting bored of sharing a marketing story, I would question, is it working for you or not? If it's working and it's in a written format, like a social media post or an email blast or a blog post, like if it's working and someone's bringing inbound leads in, well, then maybe you just don't share it as frequently. Maybe if you're sharing it every 3 months, maybe you share it every 6 months or every year, right? So I think that's a good rule of thumb when it comes to that. When it comes to staff meetings, if you're bored of sharing the same story, your people are bored with it. So that's a completely different case where you should not be sharing the same story again and again with team members. There should be different stories, so there's different excitement. So it really depends on what the person's focused on. But by all means, if you're sharing the same story with a different person and you are experiencing boredom, you really need to change your perspective on how you're viewing the story. There are stories that I've shared thousands of times in my life. One of the things that I do is I visualize the story as if it's happening. So if I'm sharing a story that I've shared, so many times I could recite it in my sleep, I'm visualizing that story happening in front of me. That helps bring out some more of that excitement.
Oh, I love that. So you're storytelling in your head, painting the picture of the story so that you can eloquently deliver that. That's such a good thing. Visualization is so important, Matt, in so many contexts. So I absolutely love that. I'm going to take that cue for the next time I'm telling one of my stories. Thank you.
You just listened to the latest FAQ Sprint episode with Michelle Griffin. If you have a question for Michelle or me, please email me at matt@mattzahn.com with the subject line FAQ episode.